Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Mars, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. I want to give some love and appreciation to the Black Muslim Leadership Council that hosted my performance in Washington, D.C. Thank you guys so much. A very, very important gathering of our Black Muslim leaders and intellectuals and imams. It was a I want to say, transformative conversation and experience, and I hope that we continue to do that again. Also, want to give a shout out. If I didn't do it last week, I'm gonna do it this week. Brother John Amos from Good Times passed away. Um, Anybody who's familiar with the works of Norman Lear have to understand the importance and the significance of Brother John Amos, who played the father of James Evans on Good Times. He did it for a number of years, and he was written out of the show largely because he felt like the writers were writing things that were not authentic to the African American experience. It was tough enough that this show was based in the ghetto, but this was always something that touched him because he was not a person who was uneducated. He was not a person who was not in touch with the conditions. He was a writer. He was a writer. He went to college. He was a football player, pro football player. I remember first seeing him actually on Sanford and Son and shows like Maud and things like that. But very significant. And I actually was blessed enough to meet him at Marquette University some years ago when he played an actor. He played an actor who got to see Haley's Comet twice. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Can we put that back up real quick? I want to shout out my sisters that are having I just put it right over my face. It's all right. Make sure that you check out the Sisters in Service brunch. Our executive producer, Sister Satana Woodfield, is a part of this group, outstanding group. They have jazz artists. That's why it's called a jazz brunch, meaning there's going to be music and food. They have Winard Harper and Jelly Pose. They have Zakia Zima, her trio, and food by Keisha Fleming. The name of their group is Anything Goes Catering. It's going to be this Sunday, October the 13th, beginning at 11 a.m. at the Priority Restaurant, 233 West Market Street, Newark, New Jersey. All right. So I don't want to waste time today because it's one of those things. First and foremost, my prayers and my du'as go out to the people in Florida, West Coast Florida, Central Florida, the East Coast of Florida. They are dealing with tornadoes, and later tonight, between tonight and Thursday, they will be dealing with what looks to be a Category 4, at best a Category 3 hurricane, Hurricane Milton, and this comes on top of course, the fact that not even a couple weeks ago, they were dealing with Hurricane Helene. Shout out to prayers out to, and I say prayers out to and be strong to the people with Helene, Asheville, North Carolina, all the way down to South Carolina, Georgia. People are still trying to get their lives together. So let's make sure we keep them in our du'as. Our title today, Politics, Hurricane Milton, and You. I could have left out Hurricane Milton, just could have talked about hurricanes because I thought about this a little bit. Congressman Marjorie Green Taylor, whatever they call it, MGT, whatever, MTG. I don't really like the lady. She looks like a man. Okay, she has man hands. If you ever watch her man hands, she has dock worker hands. That's not the point. She actually went on in a public forum, and this is white people talking to white people talking about the Democrats control the weather. She was actually saying that they control the weather, meaning that somehow the left has a alchemy where they can create hurricanes or whatever, floods, whatever. Okay, this is dumb. This is extremely dumb. I can't even see that it's meaningful conspiracy theory. But then you start looking around and you put your finger in the water of geopolitics in the United States, and you begin to understand something. That the argument that she is making, brothers and sisters, is an argument that could be used for people not certifying the election. Think about it. You already have people in place who are election deniers from the 2020 election. They're still in place. Nobody's removed them. They can be removed, but the thing that can actually bolster their argument at this point in time is an act of God. So while we have Florida going through the situation, North Carolina, Florida is not a swing state, but North Carolina is a swing state. You've heard all the hyperbole of Donald Trump talking about, all these things about FEMA. They're just bold lies. Okay, these are bold lies. FEMA's not going to help, things like that. FEMA doesn't have any money. It starts to smell, and it doesn't smell good. Here's what I think everybody should know. That the history of elections in the United States, as far as I know, as far as I've been concerned, in my 50-something years here on this earth, is that the election season is always held during what? The tornado season. It's always been held during the tornado season. All the tornadoes have gone through, Harvey, All of these have been geopolitically game changers in terms of elections. How could you forget Hurricane Sandy? When Barack Obama was running, Hurricane Sandy turned that election because the New Jersey politician, Mr. Christie, had to turn around and take a photo out with President Obama for him giving him money. And even further, there is a system where the politics is not being discussed. When I say the politics of things being discussed, I was talking with a friend earlier about infrastructure. What is the viability of infrastructure to deal with these suddenly occurring? We've had 3 hurricanes, right? We had Hurricane Beryl, damaged Houston. We had Hurricane Helene, damaged everything, killed over 200 people. And now we're looking at Hurricane Milton. What's not being said is that a large group of politicians have undermined the safety of the safety of the towns, communities, and constituents who have elected them. We're talking about the lies being told, where folks are being told that putting in safety protocols, safety measures to build up infrastructure is somehow exorbitantly high. It's going to have exorbitant costs, and it doesn't. That's number one. Number two, it allows people who are developers to give people a very, very cheap product, charge very high, but in the scope of it, a very cheap, very, very cheap product that you don't understand is a cheap product until you have some of these natural disasters, in particular hurricanes. Then on the other part of it, there's been a movement, brothers and sisters, that these people will not be able to rebuild. What they're finding out now in North Carolina, what they're finding out now, people have always known in Houston and Texas, and people have always known in New Orleans, is that the infrastructure is not insured. It's not built for people to rebuild. It's built for people to be displaced. When I mean displaced, it means you leave your property. And when you leave your property, you turn it over to folks who may not have your best interests involved, because at this point in time, they're dealing with folks who want to reshape the narrative for the property that you just left. And even more so, as we sit here and talk and you watch this, there are people who are more than willing right now to move into these spots that have been devastated in Western North Carolina, in South Carolina, and definitely in Florida. And they got, they have the National Guard waiting, but they have probably more developers than the 3,000 National Guard that are waiting to go in, because this is how the game works. I'm going to talk to you about the game works here on Politics, Hurricane Milton, and you don't move. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Thank you for joining us again. I want to make sure I give a shout out to our shout out family. Let's get into the gallery right now. First of all, I want to give a shout out my main man, All Talk for Sheep, Mr. Straight Up, Straight Down, our Canadian envoy into the show. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother. Hope everything is going well in Canada. We got my main man, Bilal Salahuddin, and his lovely queen, Sister Sonia Dalton Salahuddin. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, big brother. Hug you. Hope you're doing well in Houston. Shout out. And of course, from Milwaukee, Bruce City, my main man, my little brother Johnny L. Thomas. What's going on, beloved? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good to see you. And all the way from, is it Brampton? Is it Brampton, Adam? I always forget, but it's Ontario. My main man, Adam Khan, one of my day ones. How you doing, brother? Shout out to you across the border. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My main man, Eric from South Kakalaki. Eric, did you get any problems from Hurricane Helene in South Carolina? I don't know if it got to your part of town, man, but I definitely thought about you. Inshallah, it was okay. Inshallah, you and your family are safe. I also want to give a shout out, of course, to our executive producers, Sister Satana Whitfield, our executive producer Supreme, and I'm going to encourage everybody. Please, Sisters in Service is a nonprofit. They do a lot of work. I support them wholeheartedly, vigorously. Listen, even if you're not able to go to the event, buy a ticket because that money goes to the cause, okay? So do that. All right. Politics, Hurricane Milton, and you. There's one thing that is interesting in this whole process. It is particular politics. How can you create disruption? How can you create disruption? So you've seen a political cycle where disruption is not even a word for it. It's not even misinformation. It is just directed lies. When you see certain people, you know that they're going to lie. Okay? And the scope of it is, and this is bad, that the lies have become so bad that the people who tell the truth have now looked at it and said, I got to tell a lie too. Almost to the point that your lie balances out what they say. So the cycle is interesting. And the only thing that's not been able to have been lied about, the economy, jurisprudence with Supreme Court, abortion, all this stuff. The only topic that you can't not lie about is natural disasters. That the hurricane figures to be, on a geopolitical scope, one of the bigger things heading into the election. You say, what are you talking about, preacher? Let me tell you guys what I'm talking about. If you remember, when Trump was in office, he did something that a lot of people scratched their head at, but he was the president. He could do what he wanted. What he did largely was put together a movement to defund or drastically cut the funding for the U.S. Postal Service. Why would you cut the funding from the U.S. Postal Service? Because at this point in time, the U.S. Postal Service is taking in mail-in ballots, early voting mail-in ballots. And what they've said, and it's documented, is that they don't know if they'll be able to meet the challenge of getting everybody's ballot in. What that means is getting the ballot, getting to the right person, having it counted. This creates yet another space for people who are, or these electors, to again have a premise to not certify the election. That's number one. But number two, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina have experienced disruptions from the hurricane. Now, here's why this is why it's very, very significant for North Carolina and South Carolina, is that they don't get that scale of hurricane. They don't get that scale of hurricane. And now you're talking about a process, a cleanup process, a redefining of boundaries, also the mental capacity of people to rebound from this. And then even more so, you now have to rediscover what the hierarchy is. Because now let's say I open a swimming pool. Well, the hierarchy of the swimming pool is I need a lifeguard, right? Or I open a racetrack. Well, the hierarchy is that I need a person who can drive a car real fast and a crew can help me do that. So things switch. The priorities switch. So in these cities now, in these states now, what becomes a priority? The thing that becomes a priority is relief. We need relief, number one, and we need to rebuild, number two. Because state governments, local governments don't have the amount of financial bandwidth to reframe it. So what do? They look to the government. What is the number one question that we have? How much government involvement should be happening in our lives? So you take all those things together and you have a big mess because you can't take one from the other. It's just like the hurricane. It's like taking the water from the mud. You can't do it. You have to look at it in a holistic sense. It's not that this building was destroyed, it's that this town was destroyed. And we're getting ready to go through it with Milton. And right now, Hurricane Milton will become a political hot potato. We're already seeing that, quote unquote, Governor Ron DeSantis didn't return VP Kamala Harris' call and barely returned Biden's call. And the gamesmanship is bad because at this point in time, he needs all the help that he can get. He needs all the help that he can get. But this action serves as a proxy to other towns. We're already hearing lies, right? We're already hearing lies that the reason why FEMA doesn't have money is because it gave them to these immigrants who are, they have bad genes and all this stuff and stuff. And I'm like, and normally I would laugh. As a comedian, normally I would chuckle. But I can't chuckle. And the reason is because people are believing this stuff. Let me take a quick shot. On Instagram, we got Amani El Abed, Nice Morano, photography. Okay, cool. Q for us. Okay. Miss Patrice. Okay. All right. We got Usher, Yasmin, Khan, my main man, and Abdullah joint. What's going on? Muslim Network TV joint. And how you doing, Miss Knight? Assalamu alaikum. And K Bark joint. Cool. Thank you. Oh, okay. Hey, I got to stop here for a minute. My main man, Pumpsy Brown. Terrence Brown is an old neighbor of mine. When I say old neighbor, Terrence and I grew up. I think I met Terrence when I was 4 or 5. His parents, Alfreda Brown, Ira Brown, Tyra Brown, Salt of the Earth people, loving the death. Terrence, please tell your mom to say hello. And let your mom know my mom turned 80 at the end of last month. So good to see you, brother. Peace and blessings to your family, man. I hope you're doing well. And thanks for tuning in. Also, I forgot. I'm sorry. Sissy Houston died. Whitney Houston's mom passed away. So we pray for her on this side of the dirt and the other side of the dirt too. Okay, alhamdulillah. You doing all right? We call Terrence's nickname was Pumpsy. So you doing all right, Pumpsy? I just got to make sure you're doing all right. Don't worry, I'm gonna get back to the show, everybody. I just want to make sure my brother's doing all right, man. Good to hear you. I got to get a number, man. We got to catch up. I'm back home next week, inshallah. So we got to catch up. I know I wasn't part of the Duval crowd, but we got to catch up. So listen, this whole notion of politics, Hurricane Milton, is really something that's been brewing for a couple of years now. The argument against climate change, this is the broad argument. They're talking about Hurricane Milton, but they're talking about it in a way that's different this time. They're talking in a way that these hurricanes are becoming more and more and more man-made. That we do things to the environment. Hear me out. We do things to the environment that create this stuff. Now, people, I'm not a geologist, I'm not a scientist, but I'm going to tell you this. If you build over everything, you put concrete over everything, when it rains, it's going to flood. To build buildings, and this is the thing I was talking about with these insurance companies and these developers, the one thing you can't do, all the developers can build all the buildings they want to, but they can't make more land. And so over and over, we have these hurricanes, but they provide a fundamental shift for people to, for lack of a better word, change the narrative on housing, change the narrative on zoning, change the narrative. On where people work, change the narrative. On responsibility and culpability to make sure that people are taken care of. There was a great. If you saw 60 Minutes, I think it was last week or the week before last. Apologies. They had a story on about insurance companies, who were dealing with hurricane victims in Florida at this point, as we speak, as Hurricane Milton is going to wreak havoc. Most of the people in Florida, a lot of people in Florida don't have flood insurance. They don't have homeowners insurance. And the reason why is because it's just so sky high. And even though it's sky high, the insurance companies are not paying. Case in point, they had a family. I think the guy was some kind of a lawyer. He and his wife had a very nice house. Hurricane came through, ripped the roof off, literally ripped the roof off the house. They had the adjuster come out. The adjuster came out and did this thing, gave it to the insurance company. The insurance company told them that, we can give you $2,800. Now, the damage to the house was almost $300,000, right? People were actually sending death threats to this adjuster, and he couldn't figure out why. And he finally figured out why. It's that he was actually putting down the actual accurate amount. The house had $400,000 worth of damage. He put down $400,000. He would give it to the insurance companies, and they will rewrite his adjustment. It's criminal. It's unethical. But here's the scope of it. Insurance companies get away with it because at this point in time, all you can do to get your money is sue them. And everybody knows when you go to court, you're not going in one day and coming out the same day. You're going in one day and maybe 3 or 4 years later, you might get a decision. But in that 3 or 4 years of not having your house, in that 3 or 4 years of having to pay that mortgage on the house that's unlivable, cut the grass, pay the property taxes, in that 3 or 4 years, you might have lost your entire livelihood. That's not even to say that you got to find another place to stay. This election is a pivotal election. I'm not going through the narrative of good versus evil. I'm going to go a little bit more. It's not good versus evil. I want to shout out Ree. Assalamu alaikum. Good to see you, sister. I'm not going to go good or evil on this election. I'm going to go deeper. What's allowable and what's not allowable. That's the premise now. What's allowable and what's not allowable. In our own dialogues, in our own conversations with one another, we all know that there's a point, if you will, of, I want to say, plausibility. That we look at something and go, that's probable. But we've entered into some stuff now that it's not probable. And it's just so much of a marketplace for things that are not probable that it's squeezed out the things that are true. It's squeezed out the things that are probable. And what happens these days is that contingency will go and they'll go with the things that it's not probable because they are afraid. They are afraid to challenge their own ignorance. They're afraid to look at themselves in the mirror and go, I have to be a man and a woman in this situation of substance, of ethics, and say, this is wrong. For one of the few times in my life, I'm watching an election where ethics don't count, where character doesn't count. What it is getting to the marketplace of a narrative, and whatever you do, however you hang out your shingle, that's what you want people to see. That's not an election, brothers and sisters. That's not an election. That's a cult. We're electing in the scope of a cult. And that same cult, brothers and sisters, leads a politician that's elected and an official of the people to say that one group of politicians can control the weather. Let me get to this last point. I'm going to let you go. My prayer is not just for the people of Florida. Mine's not just for the people of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. My prayer is for us. because we can see the hurricane that's going on in Florida, but we can't see the hurricane that's coming towards us. And that hurricane, brothers and sisters, it has tornadoes of no ethics, it has cyclones of low character. And in the end, in the eye of that hurricane, is lies. There's no truth in it. I ask everybody and I implore everybody, please, 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 investigate. You're gonna hear a lot of things coming in the last, weeks of this lead up to the election. Investigate. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm saying vote for him. Vote for. I'm not doing that. I'm saying, brothers and sisters, invest in finding out the truth about these situations because politics is politics. Doesn't matter whether she wins or he wins. You guys know you still got to deal with politics. You still have to deal with politics. Just like Obama found out, hey man, black people loved you, but when he got in the White House, he was like, these white people got me doing politics. It doesn't change. There's a coalition that needs to be built for the people. And when I say built for the people, it's primed to serve our interests. It's primed to serve, for lack of a better word, the better interests, the greater good. The things that we see now, and I'm going to be careful how I say this. The things that we see now traumatize not the voters in this election, but the children of the voters. That we created a scenario whereby children don't really understand the value of the truth. The truth is now something that you run away from. Or worse, it's a last resort in a conversation. The truth is a confession after a crime has been committed. That's not the way the world works. If you're a spiritual person, a person of religion or the book, you know that's not the way it works. But here we are. We have a former president that gives you his version of the Bible, which actually turns out to be made in China. God bless America. Oh, don't forget the shoes and the coins. And I'm like, listen, this is a huckster. All right? This is a huckster. But he's a huckster that believes that he can beat you. Not be Kamala Harris, not be Mr. Waltz, not be Barack Obama. He believes he can beat you to a marketplace that you don't want to go to, but that marketplace is extremely valuable to him. And let's be honest. Look at the politicians. Look at the politicians. Green Party. I mean, look, Cornel West is my man. Dr. Blowell. But the question is, what have you run? What have you built? I could look at Trump and go, you had a business, but you ran it in the ground. Kamala Harris, what have you done? What have you built? At least she's honest. I'm going to give her some points for being honest because she's like, I was a public servant, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be an attorney general. You serve the people. So I'm going to get out of here. So my prayers, deep prayers, profound prayers to the victims and soon to be survivors of Hurricane Milton. It will be devastating. As we speak, hurricane tornadoes are spooling around all the way over in Daytona Beach, all the way on the East Coast. So, as you guys make a lot, pray. Please, put a little something in there for the people of Florida. This is not going to be good. I don't question Allah's will. Allah's best planners. I hope this works out though. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See you guys next week.